My name is Grant Holloway. I was married for 6 years. I never thought the hardest part of her affair would be my family's silence. Not because they didn't know, but because they did, and they chose her anyway. Her name was Elise. Smart, precise, quiet in public, persuasive in private. She could read a room like a courtroom. She didn't raise her voice. She lowered yours. My family loved her. My mother said she had steady hands. My father said she made me more tolerable. They used to say it like a compliment. Now I hear it for what it was. The man she cheated with wasn't a stranger. It was Marcus. My best friend since 2nd grade. Best man at our wedding. Practically family already. That's what made it easier for them. To forgive her, to fold him in, and to leave me out. When Elise told me, she didn't flinch. She waited until I was halfway through my coffee. Set her mug down slowly. Said the words like someone confessing to being tired. I wasn't planning it, Grant. It just happened. I didn't ask who. I already knew. I'd known for 3 weeks. She gave me the truth only after she felt safe inside it. That's what people like her do. They don't break your heart. They walk out after they've locked the doors behind them. I didn't tell anyone. Not at first. Not out of shame. Out of instinct. Because Elise didn't just cheat on me. She rewrote the narrative before I had a chance to open my mouth. And my family listened. When my sister called me 2 weeks later, she said Mom was worried. I asked what about. She said Elise told her you've been distant, like really distant. She's trying, Grant. I didn't correct her. I wanted to know how deep it ran. They weren't neutral. They were briefed. I showed up at my parents' house that Sunday. Same driveway, same seat at the table, same plate pattern we've used since I was a kid. Except there was a quiet edge to everything, a pressure in the room, like they'd already decided what I was. No one asked how I was doing. No one asked why Elise wasn't with me. They already knew, or thought they did, and they didn't ask for my side because they'd already picked hers. She's hurting too, my mother said after dinner. She told us things got hard. You weren't really present. That's what betrayal sounds like when it dresses itself in compassion, not anger, just quiet implication. The villain you don't have to prove, because everyone wants to believe he deserves it. I found out Elise went to Thanksgiving, sat beside my father, passed the stuffing, told the same jokes I used to tell. I wasn't invited. They called it an oversight. I called it a rehearsal. You don't need to be erased all at once. Sometimes they do it in layers. First, they stop asking questions. Then, they start accepting hers. And when your chair at the table gets filled by the man she slept with, they call it moving forward. I waited, watched, collected. She hadn't changed the passwords. Our shared drive still synced her phone. The texts, the voice memos, the plans she whispered into Marcus's messages. I saved everything, because they weren't just breaking me. They were building a new story around my silence. And one day I'd be ready to speak. It didn't happen all at once. The shift, the soft exile. It started small, subtle moments where the air changed and nobody said why. A conversation that quieted when I entered the room. A text thread where I stopped being tagged. A family photo sent out without my name in the caption. No one yelled. No one accused. They just started treating me like a guest at my own history. 3 weeks after Elise left, my father stopped returning my calls. When I reached out, I got a text. Elise mentioned you're still adjusting. Take the space you need. As if I had disappeared. As if she hadn't already moved on, with my best friend, into silence they'd prepared for me. I showed up to my nephew's birthday out of instinct. Didn't RSVP, didn't call ahead. I figured blood still counted for something. It didn't. I was the last to arrive, the only one who came alone. Elise was there. Marcus, too, holding a slice of cake and laughing with my sister like nothing had cracked. My chair was gone, replaced with a cooler. I stood for 2 hours before anyone acknowledged me. That night, I got a message from my mother. "We're all trying to move forward. Please don't bring tension into the family space." Family space, as if I'd never been part of it. They'd built a new story around me. And it was a quiet one. No screaming, no drama. Just gentle suggestions dropped into familiar ears. He was distant. He worked too much. He stopped caring. Elise didn't have to accuse me of anything. She just had to sound sad when she spoke. And that sadness became the scaffolding they hung my guilt on. I wasn't angry yet. Not fully. I was still watching, still collecting. The voice memos from her phone were short, clipped, and clear. "I told your mom he's spiraling." She nodded like she already knew. "Grant won't fight it. He hates conflict. He'll just vanish. Your dad said I deserve better. I didn't even have to say anything." I listened to them late at night, alone, headphones in, the only light coming from the screen. And with every word, the story sharpened. Not just of betrayal, but orchestration. They weren't covering up an affair. They were editing me out of the version that made them most comfortable. My sister invited me to dinner one Sunday. I said yes. I already knew what I'd find. Marcus was there, at the table, sitting in my seat. Elise sat beside him, poured wine for my mother, folded a napkin on her lap like she belonged to something permanent. I stayed 5 minutes. No one asked me how I was doing. No one asked anything. They just kept talking around me like I was a shadow that hadn't figured out how to leave. I stopped speaking for 2 weeks, didn't respond, didn't defend, didn't explain. I wanted to see how long it would take before they noticed. They didn't. I went back to the house I grew up in, the one I technically owned. They'd signed it over years ago, estate planning, they called it. Now it was just where they entertained my ex-wife. The security cameras were still active. I never told them I kept the login. That night I watched footage from the day after Elise left me. She was in the kitchen, laughing with my mother, holding a glass of wine like a celebration had just ended. Marcus arrived 10 minutes later. They hugged, comfortable, too comfortable. My father shook his hand like a man welcoming a son-in-law. That's when it settled. Not rage, not grief, precision. They didn't just choose her. They removed me to make room for her. So I made a folder, labeled it Narrative. Inside, voice memos, screenshots, footage, transaction logs, timestamps, phone call histories, every lie, every moment, every version of the story they told. Without me. I didn't scream, didn't storm in, didn't threaten. I waited, because stories built on silence collapse under the weight of evidence. And I had enough to bury their version in broad daylight. The invitation came through Rachel, a family dinner, just the 4 of them. She said it was about moving forward, said it might help to sit down together. I asked who was cooking. She said, Elise. As if that would soften the blow, I said yes. Not because I wanted to be there, but because they'd stopped looking me in the eye, and I wanted to watch them try. It was the same house I grew up in, same porch, same creaky front step, same dinner table where I learned to sit up straight and keep my voice down. Now it smelled like Elise's perfume, like lavender in theater. She opened the door. No hesitation, no fake apology. Just a tight smile, one step from smug. "Grant, you look well." She said it like I hadn't been erased, like this wasn't the stage where they practiced pretending I never mattered. My father was already seated, drink in hand. Rachel stood in the kitchen, pretending to need more time with the salad. My mother placed a hand on my back and said, "Thank you for coming." That was her way of saying, "Don't ruin this." We sat down. The air was stiff, too much silverware, too little conversation. Marcus was late, on purpose. He walked in like a man who expected the seat to be his. And it was, right beside Elise, directly across from me. I counted 5 knives on the table. Only one was sharp enough to notice. They served chicken. The polite kind of chicken. The kind that says, "Let's pretend we're all better now." Marcus asked if I was still doing consulting. My mother jumped in before I answered, told him I'd been taking some time. Like she was my spokesperson, like I wasn't sitting 6 feet away. 10 minutes in, I pulled out the flash drive. Small, unlabeled, cold in my hand. I set it gently beside my plate. No one said anything. I let them eat, let them sip their wine, let them laugh at jokes Marcus used to steal from me. Then I said one sentence. "I thought you'd want to hear your version of the story." I stood up, walked over to the living room, and plugged it into the TV. No one stopped me. Not yet. The screen lit up. Audio files, one by one. No titles, just timestamps. Elise's voice. "He'll get quiet before he gets angry. That's how you know he's about to break." My father's voice. "I know it's messy, but the last thing we need is for him to spiral. Just keep it calm." Rachel. "Do you think he knows already?" Elise says she thinks he's playing dumb. Elise again. "He never really fought for me anyway. They'll see that eventually." No one moved. No one breathed. The room stopped pretending. Elise was the first to speak. Not an apology. Not denial. Just a muttered, "You went through my phone." I looked at her, then at my mother, then at my father. "You all knew, and you chose to make me the story." I didn't stay for dessert. I walked back to the dining table, picked up the flash drive, and slid a folded document next to my father's drink. He glanced at it. Property reassignment form, signed, dated, filed 2 weeks ago. The house they sat in was now fully mine. They'd forgotten. It had been gifted to me for tax purposes years ago. They never changed the paperwork back. I walked to the front door. No one followed. No one said goodbye. I stepped outside into air that finally felt mine. Families don't have to scream to break you. Sometimes they just look away, long enough for you to disappear. But I didn't disappear. I waited. And now they knew the truth. Not just that she cheated, but that they let her. For the first time in months, no one called, no texts, no emails, no invitations disguised as reconciliation. Silence. Not the heavy kind that waits for someone to break it. The kind that lingers when people realize they've run out of ways to pretend. I didn't go back to the house for 3 days. Not because I was unsure. Because I wanted to feel what it was like to have the last word, and not need to say it twice. When I returned, it was early morning. The driveway was empty. The porch light was still on, probably from the night they all left in a hurry. I stood outside with the keys in my hand for a while, remembering every version of myself that had ever walked through that door. The boy who used to run to the kitchen for cereal. The man who proposed in the backyard. The ghost they all quietly replaced. And now, the owner, not out of inheritance, not out of grace, but by remembering what they forgot. Inside, the living room was untouched. My mother's throw blanket still draped over the couch. Marcus's coffee mug on the side table. Elise's scarf folded on the armrest like she planned to return. She didn't. No one did. The next day, Rachel tried calling. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail. I don't know what you're trying to prove, Grant, but you've hurt everyone. Elise was a mistake, but she still mattered. And playing tapes at dinner? That wasn't justice. That was punishment. I replayed it once, then deleted it. Because the truth doesn't owe you kindness. The silence became predictable. I'd wake up, no messages, check the front steps. Nothing moved. I started putting their things in boxes, not out of anger, out of clarity. Her perfume bottles, his cufflinks. The dusty wine Elise once called celebration-worthy. I didn't donate them. I didn't burn them. I stacked them in the garage like evidence waiting to be dismissed. My mother sent a card. No envelope. Just folded parchment with her handwriting, neat and practiced. I don't know how we got here. I just know we lost something bigger than the marriage. She signed it with her full name. Not Mom. I started breathing easier after that. Not lighter, just quieter, because grief demands answers. But betrayal, that just needs distance. Sometimes I'd play the recordings back in my head, not the words, the tones. How calm they all sounded, how measured, how comfortable they were in the version where I was the man who shut down, didn't try, was probably never ready for love anyway. They didn't break me with rage, they did it with a shrug, and then they waited for me to disappear. But silence is the only place you can hear what people were really saying when they thought you weren't listening. And I had been listening, longer than they knew. The real punishment wasn't the dinner. It wasn't the documents, or the deed, or the look on Elise's face when she realized I'd stayed calm long enough to end everything with a signature. The real punishment was the silence that followed. The realization that I wasn't chasing anymore, that I'd stopped trying to fix a story I never got to write. It started showing up in conversations I wasn't part of. Rachel told a friend I was finally settling down. My mother told the neighbor I'd let it go. Even Marcus, according to someone at the gym, said we'd moved past it. They called it healing. What they meant was silence. I didn't correct them, didn't post a rebuttal, didn't ask to be included, because letting people think you've moved on is the fastest way to make them stop watching you. And I still had work to do. The house was quiet now, not empty, clean, no voices echoing in the hallway, no laughter that didn't belong to me. I replaced the furniture, painted over the walls Elise insisted on. Burnt orange, she called it. Warmth and strength. I chose slate gray, not cold, just neutral, like a courtroom before testimony begins. I went through the files again, not the ones on the flash drive, the real ones, the house documents, the family trust paperwork, the small stack of signatures my father signed without reading, back when he still assumed I'd always be the good son. One of them stood out, a transfer agreement, tied to a family-owned business property. Technically, I was co-owner. Legally, they'd been using it without permission for 2 years. Marcus ran his freelance office out of it. My father paid the utilities. Rachel coordinated events there once a month. They thought they were using family space. They were trespassing. I didn't sue. I gave notice. Official, stamped, delivered by courier. 30 days to vacate. No explanation, no emotion, just policy. Rachel called first. She was angry, not hurt, offended. You're really going to evict your own family? I didn't answer the question, because it was the wrong one. Then came Marcus. He didn't call. He showed up, parked across the street, stood on the sidewalk like he wasn't sure if he should knock. I opened the door before he tried. He looked older, tired in a way that had nothing to do with work. He said my name, like a question, like a prayer. I didn't invite him in. I didn't expect this from you, he said. I nodded once. You were always the level one. I looked at him, then said it. I still am. He left without another word. They started packing the office 2 days later, quietly. No fanfare, no messages. The building stood empty by the 3rd week. And for the first time since everything collapsed, I felt something close to peace. Not justice, not closure, just space. Elise didn't reach out. I assume she moved on to whatever came next. People like her always do. They find the next table to sit at, the next story to tell. But this time, I controlled the narrative. Not out loud. On paper, I updated the trust, rewrote the titles, not for spite, for precision. 'Cause families like mine don't learn through confrontation. They learn through consequences. And I wasn't angry anymore, just thorough. They called it healing. But healing isn't forgetting. Healing is remembering everything they did and choosing not to bleed from it anymore. And I remembered all of it. The day I moved out of the house, the sky was overcast. No rain, no drama. Just the kind of dull gray that makes everything feel like paperwork. I didn't take much. I already had what mattered. Deed, trust, silence, proof. Everything else fit into 2 boxes and a drive I never let out of my sight. People think revenge is loud, doors slamming, cars screeching, tears on marble floors. But the most devastating kind is still. It's when you leave quietly, after making sure they're all sitting in a house you now legally own. I left the keys on the table, not to the front door, to the mailbox, because no one was writing anymore. Not them, not me. We'd all stopped pretending there were messages left to send. I rented a place across town, 1 bedroom, no history, hardwood floors, white walls, no ghosts in the corners. The first night, I didn't sleep, not because I was sad, because I wasn't sure what to do without the noise of being someone else's mistake. I started making lists again, nothing dramatic, just small things, groceries, books to buy, passwords to change, names to forget. Elise's name was the first to go, not because I erased her, because I didn't need it anymore. They stopped trying to reach me. Even Rachel. Even after the office was cleared out, after the family emails stopped including my name, after I revoked their access to everything they assumed was theirs. Not a word. Because nothing is more frightening to people who feed on control than a man who no longer reacts. One day I drove by the old house. They'd repainted it. New shutters. Trim. Lighter tones. Inviting. They thought painting over what happened would make it easier to live in. But the foundation still carried my name. They were renting it now. To strangers. That's how I knew they were done pretending it was a family home. A friend asked me if I ever missed them. My parents. My sister. Even Elise. I said no. But the real answer is more complicated. I don't miss them. I miss the version of me who thought they'd stay. That version of me died slowly. Not in a moment. Not in the affair. Not in the dinner. Not in the voicemail from my mother that never once said the word sorry. He died in pieces, with every silence, every polite betrayal. And by the time I finally walked away, he was already gone. I didn't walk away with revenge. I walked away with clarity. I walked away with ownership. Of the house. Of the truth. Of my name. That's what I took with me. Not vengeance. Control. And the peace that comes when you stop trying to sit at a table that was never built for you. They still tell the story sometimes. At gatherings I'm not invited to. In quiet corners of weddings, holidays, soft reunions where my name hangs in the air, but never lands. They tell it like a memory, like a storm no one could stop. He pulled away. He became so cold. She was hurting, and he just shut down. That's the version they'll pass down, the one without evidence, the one where betrayal is blurred into sadness, and I'm just a man who couldn't hold on. They'll never tell the part about the flash drive, the recordings, the exact moment Elise realized I'd been watching her rewrite me for months. They won't mention the dinner where I played their voices back to them, word for word, lie for lie. They'll never admit the house was mine, that they ate their Sunday meals under my roof while discussing how best to remove me from the picture. They'll say I left, not that I owned the door they walked through. They'll say I changed, that I became cold, distant, unreachable. But the truth is I was never distant. I was just quiet, long enough for them to show me exactly who they were. And once I knew, I stopped asking them to be anything else. Healing didn't come like a wave. It came like a closing. One document at a time, one box at a time, one silence at a time, until the only voice left in the room was mine. And I didn't need to raise it. I don't explain myself anymore. Not when someone asks what happened. Not when someone says, I heard you and Elise. I just nod. Let them believe whatever version makes them feel safe. Because they don't need the truth. Only I did. They live in their version. I live in mine. And mine has no room for borrowed forgiveness or polite forgetfulness. It has a deed with my name on it, an inbox with no apologies, and a peace they'll never understand because it wasn't handed to me. I had to build it from the silence they left behind. Let them gather. Let them tell it wrong. Let them toast Elise like she wasn't a thief in the shape of a wife. Let them call it history. Because I call it evidence. And the difference is, I kept mine.